How many of you grew up in homes where there was a big bookcase full of lots of books? I see at least half and maybe more. Well, that was true for me. My father was a Baptist minister, and he had all of these reference books. I'm not sure how many of them were read or used, but there was a big bookcase, and there were lots of books. I looked at them sometimes and was never terribly interested, except for one book that just caught my attention. It was the book called Fox's Book of Martyrs. Fox's Book of Martyrs. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that book. But not only did it have interesting text about martyrs everywhere from the early Christian era through the time when there was a revolution in Christianity and Protestantism was born. A lot of martyrs all along the way. But the neat thing, well, it wasn't that neat, but the thing that really drew me were the illustrations. Now, sometimes the illustrations showed the martyr being pierced through with a sword or crucified in some unusual sort of way, but they suffered. They were martyrs. They were victims at the hand of the world outside of them that seemed to be against them. But I'm happy to tell you that's more, the story is more than that. It doesn't just stop with that victimhood, that suffering, but it moves on to a victorious and even beyond that, a state where you can have the divine flow through you and actually be that divine quality that you are. So that's what we're going to talk about today. The title is that for I See the Best of You. So today we're going to kind of be on both sides of the fence. It's true of us, but it's true of you as well. Each of these things that we talk about is true of you. And some of them are true of you and you want to let them be part of the past. And some of them are true of you and you want to embrace them and move forward. So let's jump in. If you remember, and you were with us the last couple of weeks, we talked about levels of consciousness. And I've already referred to them, but they move everywhere from victim consciousness to victor consciousness to vessel consciousness. Thank you, Donna. I lost it for a moment. Vessel consciousness and finally verity consciousness. And we'll finish up next week with verity consciousness, but we're going to review the first two and go on through to vessel consciousness primarily today. Let's talk about victim consciousness. Victim consciousness is where you are subject to all that is outside of you. The world around you, the people in your life, the situations that you get into, you are a victim of that. The world acts to you. Everything happens to you. And when you do it like that, sometimes there's a story that comes up. That's usually a blaming story. Somebody's got to be to blame. Maybe yourself, but more than likely somebody else that you've judged and said that they're responsible for what my life is like. I'm a victim of the situation, the way that person acts. I am a victim. This is victim consciousness. Now, you might be asking, why doesn't anybody like me? Nobody understands me. Well, that's the way it is with victim consciousness. Sometimes you get involved, not just yourself, but you get involved with a pity party. Everybody may ever be involved with a pity party where you're listening to someone else's complaints and how they blame certain things in their life and how they've suffered so badly, and then you have to chime in and see if you can top that. Because, you know, a pity party wouldn't be good if you just left it there. You have to top it. And so you and I are both involved in this cycle that we run through again and again in our minds, again and again and again, and finally we take on the character of the victim. So this is what we move from. Now, it's not surprising that we do this. I think we've sometimes taken inappropriate, that's how it goes, inappropriate understanding of something like the crucifixion of Jesus, who suffered and died for us. And that's not the lesson. The lesson is beyond that, that victory is a part of it. That everything, the appearances you talked about, Donna, is not as it seems to be. But there's a truth beyond that that resonates, that's consistent with the very nature of the universe and of us. We sometimes take a wrong lesson from the Buddhists who say life is suffering, and well, we don't realize that suffering to the Buddhists is maybe a little more than we think of in our normal understanding of suffering, because it actually means, dukkha is the word that's used, a wheel that's off its axle. There's a cart, and the wheel has fallen off the axle. Time to come back and take that error and set it right, to see it rightly, as you say, Donna, quoting Eric Butterworth. So Buddhism has so many tools to go ahead and set it right, set it rightly in our own lives. So that suffering is not an end in itself. It's the seeming stuff that's out there in the world, the seeming reality, but it's not the end. So it's no surprise that we become victims, because we take and misappropriate and mistranslate those truths. We end up saying, poor me, poor somebody else. But I'm going to come back to something that Donna alluded to in the metaphysical moment. Those truths that are found in the Sermon on the Mount. I'm sure you're all familiar with the Sermon on the Mount, and we call them Beatitudes. And Eric Butterworth, as she said, talks about them as Beatitudes, attitudes about being. So the one that I chose that kind of shows this is the Beatitude that says, "Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Now, there's suffering in a nutshell if you take it at face value. But Eric says, let's look a little bit deeper. Let's look at the underlying truth. The persecution may not be by somebody out there that's after you. It may be, in fact, in your mind. So the mind is going around and around again and again, saying, you're persecuted, oh me, oh my. And we miss the fact that it goes on to say, theirs is the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven, heaven, as we've often said, is not a place in the sky. But Eric gives it a special meaning to say it comes from the word expanding. Blessed are those who set things right in their mind, because they will expand and fulfill the potential that they've been given. Let me say that again. Setting it right in mind, seeing it rightly, as Eric says, and then experiencing the expansion that allows us to fulfill our potential. And isn't that where we want to be? That's where I want to be. So I have a nice affirmation, since we're talking about affirmations, that kind of goes with this. It's what I call the truth about this be attitude or attitude of being. And here it is. In our quest of truth, you and I press on past our humanity to an awareness of our potential, our divinity. Once more. In our quest of truth, you and I press on past our humanity to an awareness of our potential, our divinity. Victim, I don't see you that way. It may appear that way from time to time, but I don't see you that way because that's not the truth of it. The truth is that you have unlimited potential, that you have the ability to set things right, that you have the ability to go back and say, this is an error, I'm going to do it another way. And thus, you can move beyond that victim consciousness. Let's move on to victor consciousness. It's kind of the opposite, the flip side. Well, that would seem to be all that there is. If you're not a victim, you can be a victor, and then everything is hunky-dory. Well, not exactly. But victor consciousness says, I control my own experience. I have control of that experience. It isn't life happening to me. It's life happening in me, by me. Donna helps me. Confession. Donna and I discussed these messages a few times before they end up here on Sunday morning. By me. Because I am the victor. Life happens as a result of my control of my own experience. I'm aware of my innate powers. In Unity, we talk about the 12 powers. And those powers are each innate. They're a part of us. They're our very nature. And I become aware of those powers, and as I become aware of those powers, I change from a victim to a victor, because I'm looking toward that potential that I have, and I'm claiming it. There's a little bit of victim consciousness still in that. Because, well, if you got a victor, you got to have some kind of a victim. So we tend to maybe say, look at me compared to somebody else. I'm the victor, they're still the victim. Well, maybe not. Let's try to isolate that victor consciousness where we control our own experience, and therefore we move toward that which we desire. The beatitude that corresponds with that is the beatitude, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Well, it's easy to misinterpret that. The meek may mean I am subservient, I give in to you, I'm meek and lowly. But I challenge you to look a little deeper and to look at the underneath meaning. Meek with regard to the divinity. Meek meaning without pride. Meek meaning that here I am, allowing my will to be part of the universal will, part of the divine will. And in that way I am meek, and the meek shall inherit the earth. All that is intended in the creation of the earth, of the universe, is our inheritance. As we are able to just let go of our own human personal will and become a part of that will which is there for us, we're one with that. We sometimes forget that. The truth that goes with us is this. And here's an affirmation again. Remember, we're talking about affirmations. I am, or you are, in tune with the divine and will prevail. That will prevail is an important part. That success, that achievement that we desire in our lives is ours. As we work with the will of the divine, the will of the one, that divine will which is in us. When we live in that way, we look at life by the term by me. I live life by my own standards, by that divine within me that prompts me to know this, to act this way, to take the next right step. So I golf regularly, and I have some golf buddies. There are about 5 or 6 of us that get together from time to time. And because I just relatively recently started to play golf, I'm really glad for the way my golf buddies and I work. My golf buddies and I aren't particularly competitive. Maybe we compete with ourselves. But so many times during that round of golf, I hear, "Go get it, Neal. You can do this. You're going to have a good drive on this hole." They're seeing me as a victor. They're not seeing me as the duffer that's going to put it in the water or slice it one way so it's way out of the way from where I'm going to the hole or miss it altogether. They're seeing me in a different light. So I see you in that different light as well. When I see you that way, I confess, I'm working with Donna here again. We say things like, "I can do this." And then we have that affirmation, "I am confident." We say things like, "I reach my goals." "I can succeed," or "I am successful." "I overcome obstacles." "I can find a way out of this situation." "I am progressing." Affirmation, "I am capable and able." "I use my knowledge to solve problems." "I can do better." "I manage my time well." "I am confident." "I keep my promises." "I will find a solution." This is victor consciousness. The ability to say, I control my life. I have these powers within me, the divine within me, that are tools all I need to be able to achieve what I desire in life. And I'm taking advantage of it. I'm on that train. Victor consciousness, I see you this way. But I don't see you just this way. There's more. And so we move on to vessel consciousness. The thing about vessel consciousness, and I'll kind of describe it in a minute, but it assumes a couple of things, some of which we've already referred to. There's something bigger than me. I'm not the end all. There's something that is greater than I am. There's a higher power. There's source. There's the universe. There's all that is. You have your own name for this. There is something greater than me. And then that something greater is in me. Not just something out there. It's in me. The divine is in me. And then carrying it on, it expresses as me. That's something bigger. The qualities of the divine express as me, as we allow that. So we move into vessel consciousness. I think of a vessel, it holds things. I also like to think of it as a conduit. It allows things to flow. So that vessel consciousness allows that divine spirit within us to flow through us. And it becomes in me and as me instead of just by me. It's another level up to be able to see that the very truth of our being is that that divinity, which is part of our very nature, can come through me and out to other people. So when I see the best in you, I'm seeing something that comes through me, and it blesses you. Have you ever, I'm sure you have had the experience where you said something or you did something, you were prompted and urged, and you didn't exactly know where it came from. But it had great effect. The person that you were communicating with, the situation that you were in, was changed as a result of something that felt like it came through you. You were a conduit. You were a vessel that allowed this to happen. Think of your own experience. I'll give you an example from mine. Many years ago, 10, 12, I don't know, I wrote a blog for several years. And I enjoyed doing that, did it at least a couple times a week. And it was about spiritual things. And I wrote, and I shared it, and I had somewhat of a following, and so many good comments from people who said, this really blesses me. What you had to say, what you wrote, really blesses me. Later on, I looked at that blog, and I read what I had written, and I said, I didn't know that back then when I wrote that. Somehow something came through me that was beyond just my humanness. And that was the divine coming through. And I know that you have had those experiences in different ways as well. This is vessel consciousness. The beatitude that I think illustrates this best is, blessed are the meek. Got the wrong page. Blessed are the poor in spirit. I was back in victim consciousness. For theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Remember, heaven is that place of expansion, that place that looks toward our potential. And blessed are the poor in spirit. How often we've stopped with blessed are the poor. That's where I grew up with. Yeah, it's blessed to be poor. Be happy you're poor. Not so. Poor in spirit. Poor in spirit means that you're relinquishing those human characteristics that sometimes steer you the wrong way. That personal will that's a little bit ego-centered. Well, probably a lot ego-centered. And moving on toward the potential that's there for you. What you can be, what you truly are, it just appears different from that at the moment. You'll get there. The truth that goes with this, the affirmation, is I am open and receptive to the inflow and the outflow of all that there is in God. I am open and receptive to the inflow and the outflow of all that there is in God. Don't you see how that's a conduit? You're open to the infilling of that divinity, that making real in your life the divinity that you are, and then the outflow that blesses the world as you work with it. So when I say I see the best of you, I want to do it from a vessel consciousness, where spirit flows through me and out to you, because I know the same is true for you. That very best of you, that divine within you, is there. And when I see it, I affirm that in you. So how do I do that? We always end up there. Oh, I forgot this. I have a handout for you. I had a slide for you too, Tom, but I didn't get it. Well, I'll just go through this. Afterwards, you make sure to get the handout if you're here. Somebody note who's online, and I'll try to send that to everybody as well, so we can do that. We were having fun doing sound checks with Cinnamon Twist here this morning, so that slipped right by me. How do I do this? I press on past my own humanity and experience my potential. The truth is, I have control over my experience. And when I exercise that control at the prompt of Spirit, I move past my humanity, that victim consciousness, and experience my potential. That's number one. That's how I do it. Number two, I am in tune with the divine will, and I will prevail. Whatever's happening in my life out there, as long as I'm tuned up, like Annie tunes her guitar, as long as I'm tuned up, it's going to come out right. When I'm in tune with the divine, I am a victor. I will prevail. And then thirdly, what we just spoke of, I am open and receptive to the inflow and the outflow of all that there is in God. Ooh, how do you get receptive? Number one, in quiet time. Number one, when you can put aside everything. Oh, and I know this takes practice, this takes work. But realize what you're getting and do the work. When I am receptive to the inflow and the outflow of all that there is in God, I become a vessel, a conduit to share that with you, with this spiritual community, with this community of Payson, Arizona, and with the world. So remember at the beginning I talked about Fox's Book of Martyrs, those sufferers. Well, it's not all like that when you look at it with different eyes. Let's look at it with different eyes from a couple of people in our time. How about Mahatma Gandhi? It might have seemed like he was suffering because he lived in poverty, but not so. He fulfilled his potential in an amazing way. He moved beyond that victim consciousness to victor and even vessels as he affected millions and still does. How about Martin Luther King? The same thing. How about Desmond Tutu and Nelson Mandela? All of these achieved that vessel consciousness and more next week and allowed the divine to flow through them. It wasn't really like it seemed to be. It was so much more than that. And the result was blessing to the world. Now, blessing, of course, means to prosper or to encourage. That's what happened to the world as a result of those people. And what happens to the world as a result of you moving from vessel consciousness to bless all around you. The Course in Miracles says it this way: I am as God created me. Simple, straightforward, no ifs, ands, or buts. I am as God created me, and that creation was a perfection. That creation allowed you access, in fact, oneness with the divine. So I would say also, you are as God created you. I am as God created me. I see the best of you, and so it is.